Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the session on diversity outreach strategies. And hello in the chat area as well. I'm Dr. Nicholas Nelson Goddard, the chair of the Florida PTA DEIJ, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Subcommittee. And I am co-presenting this session with Diana Delgado, who is also on the Florida PTA DEIJ Subcommittee. And before we dive in, let us have a word from our leadership, starting with our current president, Carolyn Nelson Goddard.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. I have no doubt that this will be an informative session, as all of our Road to Success sessions are. Today, hopefully you'll get some tips that allow you to do further outreach into the community, to embrace all of the people who should be a part of what we are doing. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the members of the executive committee who are on the call, and I will be going in the order that I see you on my screen. Karen Mazzola.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome from the Education Commission.
Thank you. Melanie Williams.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Bert Miller.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Jude Bruno.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining.
I'd also like to introduce the members of the Board of Directors who are on today. I'll make sure I try not to miss anybody. Felita Tutt.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Kay Hawkins.
Good afternoon.
Tiffany Graham.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And Crystal Hayes. Crystal's having technical difficulties, but she's clapping. We don't see her face, but we see her hand clap. And I think I've covered all of the members of the EC, as well as the Board of Directors. So back to you, Nicholas.
Thank you. Good being acquainted with everyone. So let us now dive in to the strategies. Right, so before getting into details on the diversity outreach strategies, we want to keep in mind the mission statement, where PTA's mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. And all children refers to all children. And when we think about diversity outreach, we think of all children. So when we define it, we would think of intentional efforts to engage and involve communities from diverse backgrounds and communities. So that refers to diversity in all of its forms, not just specifically with respect to race and ethnicity, though that's certainly a major part of it, but including everything. So what we want to do is to foster inclusivity, representation, and importantly, equal opportunities within the PTA. And with more details on the benefits, we have Diana.
So for the benefits of the diversity outreach, what we do is we try to have increased community engagement and participation. We have advanced decision-making through diverse perspectives and experiences, improved cultural competence within the PTA, greater understanding and support for the needs of all families, and strengthen relationship between the PTA and diverse communities. The next slide, please. Your role in diversity outreach is to champion inclusivity and diversity in both within and outside of the PTA. We build bridges between the PTA and different cultural groups, also communicate the value of diversity within the PTA to wider community, to the wider community.
In formulating these strategies, you want to identify the groups that you have to reach out to in particular. So of course, you will try to include everyone by definition, but you also want to have targeted approaches where you think about how to reach out to groups who may not be fully represented, or groups that you may not have involved in your PTA. So to do this, and you would first identify these groups by understanding that diversity includes everything. So as I mentioned before, it does include race and ethnicity, but you can also think of language as one element of diversity. Importantly, socioeconomic status, where the positioning in terms of wealth, social class, will make a difference in terms of people's participation or their feeling of comfort within PTAs. So you would look towards the unique challenges that are experienced by the different groups and see how they can act as a potential barrier to engagement, and try to overcome those barriers so that people feel more welcome. And in this, you would also try to tailor your outreach efforts to address the specific concerns of the different groups, realizing that experiences are different. So I'm a sociologist outside of my PTA work, and we have what's known as the social construction of reality, which is this idea that objective reality is difficult, if not impossible, to pinpoint. And instead, it is something that is experienced uniquely both by individuals as well as by different groups. So you have to acknowledge that when people are in the same physical space or the same situation, that they are not necessarily experiencing the exact same thing, because from the moment they were born, they have different perspectives that are, we could say, accentuated or built upon throughout their entire lives. So reality would be socially constructed in the sense that your lens through which you see the world is different. This, of course, is the same for individuals, but it is expanded even more when we talk about different groups. So when doing this, you would want to do a demographic analysis of your communities. And this can include doing research on the different groups within your community. So I suggest one source could be the US Census Bureau. You can take a look at the number of different groups within your community, and this would be helpful. Also, you can analyze your population in terms of different cultural groups, ethnic groups, as well as socioeconomic groups, to see what a proportionate reflection would actually look like in your community, because it may be different than what you would expect. Ideally, you would want to have representation that reflects your school community or your PTA community within your PTA. So to do that, you can also examine enrollment statistics. You can look at language preferences. Florida is a very diverse state when it comes to languages, so you would want to see which languages are popular in your location, as well as any other relevant data, and identify any disparities or underrepresentations within the groups, which could be surprising to you. There are often pockets of different groups based on migration patterns, based on immigration, that may not receive the amount of attention that would be expected, such as the Russian-Ukrainian population in Northeast Miami-Dade County. I'm in Miami-Dade County. Can also think of the Brazilian population within Broward County, particularly in the northeastern part of Broward County. So there are these populations that may be overlooked or may be hidden, that by doing a demographic analysis can easily be found.
Okay, and also doing those will help you understand the unique needs for the different communities. That would the way that you would do those is to conduct different focus groups or surveys to gather input from diverse community members. You would listen to the concerns, priorities, and expectations of different groups. You could that would help to understand the unique challenges and barriers faced by specific communities. It would also help to recognize that cultural nuances and values may impact engagement. And as we stated before, it would help to tailor outreach efforts to address the diverse perspective and needs of target groups.
So in reaching out to these specific groups, you want to include messages that that resonate with the different populations. So you want to look at the language and tone that you're using and the different interpretations that would be possible across cultures. You want to use inclusive language. So you want people to feel as if they're involved and not use anything that could potentially be alienating. And this can be different from what you would expect. It can be surprising to you, but this is part of why it's good to have a diverse group of people within your PTA's leadership, because they can make you attuned to some of these potential pitfalls. And you also want to avoid stereotypes. And with this, you would want to acknowledge and respect cultural traditions, cultural norms. So whenever it would be appropriate, you can use some of the cultural traditions and cultural activities as a way to be a bridge to a participation and acknowledgement that you're aware of the different cultural events, cultural trends, and that you embrace it. As well, it's important to seek feedback, and this feedback idea will come up again and again. You want feedback from the community members to ensure that your messaging is culturally appropriate. So you can just ask people, would this message be appropriate? Would this resonate with people in these different groups? And if the answer is yes, from a variety of different people, you don't want just one representative from one of your target groups. Ideally, you would have multiple. And if the idea is yes across multiple people, then go ahead and proceed. But if there are any warning signs or stop signs, then you want to reassess if that would be an appropriate inclusive message. And everyone gets it wrong at some instance, and it's fine to get it wrong. Just the idea that you're asking ahead of time is already puts you head and shoulders above where you would be otherwise. The point is not to be perfect, because nobody would be perfect. The point would be continuous improvement. And if you're continuously improving, then you are inching closer and closer to the ideal, perfect, inclusive PTA. And one way to do this will be to examine communication styles with respect to context. And we see that there is a theory from psychology in terms of cultural viewpoints with respect to subjects and to objects. So what this would be within context for low context or high context cultures. The idea would be that some societies and cultures are more direct. They would look towards the specific situation and look towards the different symbols and ideas that are directly in front of oneself. And you wouldn't need to examine the entire social world or entire social environment to understand. Instead, you would look towards just what you see, let's say, in front of your face and take it at face value. We can say that the US and Western society generally can be considered a low context culture. So that would mean that you would interpret words spoken directly and not necessarily put them in nuance. You would look for more likelihood of individualism as seen as a positive good. And there would be not an expectation of common understanding or experience. So things would have to be said explicitly and spelled out, as opposed to high context cultures. So these would be cultures in which more indirect communication is likely, situational awareness. These are more likely to be collectivist cultures where people would not necessarily be individuals or individualistic, but rely on others and have the experience that would be common among other people. And to put this in context, so it's not just simply abstract ideas, you have a couple of visual examples. So this low context ad, which you would be more likely to see in the US, Canada, for instance, would for Coca-Cola, not a product endorsement, we would see just the two Coke bottles clinking and share a Coke. So that would be an ad that we might see here. But in context, we have an ad from China where it would be high context, where we see the individuals involved. We see the two men smiling, so we can assume it's a happy situation. As well, we see in the background, we see the lanterns, so we can see that it would be part of a Chinese festival. So it's high context in the sense that we understand a social situation, positive social situation, and a cultural event. If we put that in greater context within PTA or the US context, if we are thinking of making flyers for an upcoming event, you can think of low context. So we see Viva. So see that as a celebratory term from Spanish. We just see the background as general, see a violin, and but it's not really put in its full context. We do see the date and the location, but in contrast, a high context flyer would involve, see people, can see positive, can see that they're in the community, and then details about the event. So that would be one way to consider using an inclusive messaging strategy to include different groups, where you examine the demographics who you're trying to reach and whether the groups would, on average, be high context or low context, you can use that. So next we'll go over a series of different demographic groups within Florida, and we'll include a wide variety of groups in terms of the largest percentages and specific things to keep in mind, specific strategies. I'm sure that's a big reason why many of you are on this afternoon. So the first would be a Black and African American outreach. So a couple of important things to keep in mind would be to acknowledge the historical and social context of the Black community's experience within the state of Florida, within your specific community and nationwide, in terms of historical, well, the history, broadly speaking, from think back to before the transport of enslaved Africans to the continent. You can also think of experiences of discrimination and ultimately elements of triumph in terms of civil rights, as well as continued challenges with respect to discrimination. But also think of respecting specific cultural traditions. Think of Juneteenth. So Juneteenth is becoming a much more widely celebrated holiday. We see that it's become a federal holiday. So more people are engaging in celebrations for that. So I would encourage you to potentially look at that as an avenue for engaging with the African American community in your area. Also Black History Month, of course. So it's important to emphasize the importance of representation, both demographically, symbolically, and also practically within your PTAs. And one strategy would be to engage with Black organizations, historically Black organizations in your community, to try to build trust and collaboration. And also create platforms to ensure that Black voices are heard as well as valued in your PTAs. And in addition to Black outreach, we have a map in terms of the Black population by county, just to show you that there is a Black presence throughout the state of Florida. This is just raw numbers, but we see the highest numbers within the South Florida region, Orlando, Polk, Tampa Bay, and also Jacksonville or Duval County. But there's a presence throughout the state. And we'll also look at a couple of other maps to see the demographic groups. Next, we have Hispanic outreach.
So we can also try different ways of engaging in the specific communities as far as Hispanic outreach. We could recognize the diversity within the Hispanic community, including different nationalities. A lot of times just because we're Hispanic, between ourselves, we know that there's a lot of different types of Spanish. So, we do have to recognize that. Provide different bilingual communications and resources to ensure inclusivity. I know a lot of times in our school, most of our meetings take double the amount of time because we start off in English and we translate it into Spanish. So we always try to have, that bilingual translation. Celebrate cultural events such as Hispanic Heritage Month. We just had that now. It was September 15th to October 15th. So that was, we just had that happening now. Collaborating with Hispanic community organizations to foster partnerships. So we can, deal with local Sedano's. For us in Miami-Dade, they do celebrate that really big. So that's, something that local stores can actually help out with that. And in many of the schools, they'll be willing to participate with that. And that's also the map. Miami-Dade, we do have a lot of Hispanic, population there. And then as you start going towards the Panhandle, it kind of weans out a little bit. But we just kind of have to figure out where there's more of a population, and even if there's less of a Hispanic population, it is a good idea to just reach out to those that are still there, just to make sure that they're not left out.
Also representing a fairly large percentage of the state of Florida would be the Haitian and Haitian American communities, so about 2% overall. And to do this, you would have to understand the unique cultural heritage of the Haitian community, including the pride that the Haitian community takes within the Haitian Revolution and the ultimate representation of Haiti as a nation state. So it's also important to recognize the significance of Haitian Creole as a primary language of communication within the Haitian community. So yes, there's a significant percentage who speaks French, but Haitian Creole is the active language that the community would use. So when possible to have a translation or translator into Haitian Creole, that would be useful. In terms of translation, both in terms of Haitian Creole, Spanish, other languages, Google Translate is a very good resource that is consistently improving with the improvement of AI, artificial intelligence. It's getting better and better in terms of putting things in context. So you can use that as a no-cost resource, but ideally you would have an actual person. And with the Haitian community, we want to address barriers related to immigration status, also acculturation challenges, where there might be a type of fear of going to the school setting, or a idea of a social hierarchy, where there might be thought that if someone is in a certain position within the school, or even potentially within the PTA, then they wouldn't be questioned or anything along those lines. So you want to be as inclusive and open as possible. And as with the other groups, it will be useful to engage with members of the Haitian community. And continuing as we did before with the maps. So if we examine the Haitian population within the state of Florida, we do see that the largest percentage, which would be 2% overall of the state, the largest percentage would be within Miami-Dade County, especially the northeastern section of it. However, we see a presence throughout the state. The main reason I wanted to show this map is to emphasize this point, that it's not simply a South Florida issue in terms of including the Haitian community. It's throughout, where we see that even within the Florida Panhandle, it would be a relatively small percent, but there would be a Haitian presence. So I would encourage you all throughout the state to do your best to include the Haitian community as well within your PTAs. Next, we have the LGBT community, which is sizable as well.
Okay. When we speak about reaching out to different communities, at least the way that I feel, it's not only about where you live or where you've come from, it's also who you are and what you're becoming and how you're developing. So it does include your emotions and what you're going through and who you are as a person. So a lot of times we do have to reach out and remember that there are different, there's different types of diversity. So a lot of the students do go through different, diversity as far as identification. So 7% of these students do self-identify as LGBTQ community, and that was in 2019. So we're in 2023. So, it has. There's also percentage from 2022 percentage who self-identify as transgender or non-binary. And it says in the US, young adults are most likely to be transgender or non-binary. For adults age 18 to 29, then it goes into 30 to 49, and then 50 plus. So these are the number for the adults. I do feel that this is important. Sorry, I do feel that this is important because yes, we do deal with schools, but we're also dealing with families. So this will help us to reach out to the different families, aunts, uncles, teachers, staff that are in our community, because we are trying to reach out to everybody that will have an influence on the children in the community. Okay, sorry, next slide.
Yes, exactly. So also keep in mind the percentage of parents who would self-identify as being part of the transgender or non-binary community in the LGBT community. All right, so next we have outreach to the white non-Hispanic community. So this group does not normally receive attention with respect to outreach, with respect to DEIJ activities, but it's important to include this demographic as well. It is a demographic just like any other group. It has a cultural and social nuances like any other group. So it's important to identify some ways to reach out to the white non-Hispanic community. With this, a couple of things to keep in mind are to recognize the emphasis on individualism within the community, as well as personal freedom, and to recognize the diversity within the white non-Hispanic community, that it's not a monolith, just like the other groups aren't monoliths. The white non-Hispanic community is not a monolith. You see diversity in terms of a rural-urban divide, where so many of you are probably in cities, many of you are probably in smaller communities and towns throughout the state, and the experiences are different. There's also a religious divide, religious diversity within the white non-Hispanic community, from different denominations of Christianity, like Catholicism, Episcopalianism, being Seventh-day Adventist, being Jewish. So these are different religious groups with different cultural experiences. It's important to acknowledge those, as well as socioeconomic diversity. As with the other groups, you see some who would be wealthy, you see some middle class, as well as some who would be working class, as well as working poor. So in addressing these different groups, you would have different challenges and barriers, and you would want to try to bring those barriers down, if not eliminate them to the greatest extent that you can. For language, you would want to offer translation services and interpretation support where you can. So ideally, you would have diverse communities within your PTA who would be able to do this for the sake of volunteering. And we also have young parents, so childcare services would be helpful, and offering scholarships and assistance for membership and for events would also be helpful.
Okay, we also would try to, or should be trying to build an inclusive PTA culture. In order to do that, we should be trying to establish diversity, equality, and inclusion policies within the PTA's governing documents, incorporate diverse perspectives into decision-making processes and policy development, organize diversity and inclusion training sessions for PTA members and volunteers, foster a sense of belonging and community through inclusive social events and activities, and continuously evaluate and improve the PTA's practice and policies to ensure inclusivity. Promoting diversity and inclusion within PTA leadership. That would happen by encouraging diverse representation within PTA leadership position, actively seek out and support individuals from underrepresented groups to assume leadership roles, implement inclusive recruitment and nomination processes, provide training and resources to promote cultural competence and equity within PTA leadership.
So you want to encourage participation from diverse members. So diverse just refers to a wide variety of types of people within your PTA and within your school community. So you want to provide opportunities to actively participate in decision making. You wouldn't want a situation where all of the decision makers are part of one demographic and the membership or even the non-membership would be part of a different demographic. You want everything to balance to the greatest extent possible and feasible in terms of the different groups. So you'd also offer culturally responsive programming, meaning that the types of events you have are attuned to the cultural groups within your community. So you might have things that align with different festivals or specific events throughout the year that are culturally and socially significant to the different demographics of your community. And mentorship and buddy programs for new members would be helpful in terms of feeling comfortable and getting involved. And this really crosses beyond specifically diversity outreach, but it's a good idea, generally speaking, so that people are more comfortable becoming involved within PTA and meeting people who are there by simply, saying hello to someone and having lunch with them and giving them the ropes of what to expect in terms of PTA. That can be extremely useful. Community partnerships, as we've mentioned, for the different specific outreach groups are a good idea. And this just involves reaching out to the other community groups, nonprofits, for instance, within the area where you are, to figure out where you can work together, or even just to share resources in terms of ideas and information. And they can just give simple tips on how to reach specific groups. And every community has some of these different community groups that you can reach out towards and receive information from. So every community has some of these. And to see whether your outreach strategies are actually useful, you want to have some measurable goals and objectives. These don't have to be extremely elaborate, doesn't have to be like a science experiment, but just having some goals that you can use as a yardstick for success would be extremely useful. You want to collect some data on participation, engagement. So just it can be very simple. So saying you could do a head count of the number of people who attended. So say that 20 people attended your event on let's say a cultural festival. So that is some good data. And of those people who attended, let's say that 3/4 of them were not already involved. So that would be pretty successful. You can also use surveys, feedback forms, focus groups, where you just have a set of people answering some questions about whether an event was successful or not, whether their thoughts on a PTA are improved or changed in any way. Again, these don't have to be extremely formal events. You can just have them be relaxed and casual. You can have a focus group at a restaurant, just having appetizers. But just the key thing is to have some type of yardstick. And also, it'd be good to track membership demographics to see any changes over time, to ensure that you're moving in the right direction in terms of inclusivity, that more people who are representative of your communities are involved. And through this process, you can have continuous improvement. As I mentioned at the outset, the goal is to not beat yourself up for being imperfect, for not always saying the right thing, but the goal is to continuously improve. So this to evaluate your past performance and to get feedback, to get responses in terms of what you're doing well, and also responses in terms of what you're not doing so well, and to incorporate those to constantly change and constantly get better. So if you think of, let's say, a Google or a Facebook, the way that they stay on top and have been on top for so long is that they're constantly collecting data and constantly adapting their websites and their apps to make the user experience better. So think of yourself as a PTA version of Google or PTA version of Facebook, Instagram, where you are examining how your PTA is doing with respect to the outreach strategies or even other fields. And you're constantly trying to incorporate that information to get better. And make sure you have multiple feedback channels for this information. Don't make it just one person, or don't make it just a set of a couple of people. Try to diversify your data and to constantly receive information. And also stay informed as an individual for emerging trends. So just you can watch the local news, read the local newspaper to see what's going on. And a good idea would also be to seek professional development opportunities to stay connected. So if you are involved in workshops, if you, let's say, are part of national calls and events, that is extremely useful in staying on the cutting edge in terms of some of these ideas, and staying on the cutting edge in terms of some of the technology that's used. And this is part of why it would be important to reach out to many of these community organizations and groups, because they can inform you of these different events that are happening, and you can attend them. And through attending them, you don't have to necessarily spend a lot of time, or let's say necessarily get a leadership role within those, but just attending a webinar a couple of times a year, you can keep up to speed in terms of these ideas and in terms of what's going on in different communities. Some additional resources. So you have a couple of books as well as links. Links are also in the chat areas. Thank you for adding those. And if you want to stay in touch, we have our email addresses here. And with that, actually perfect timing. We wanted to have a session for any questions. We will open up the questions. So I'll initially start. So while you think of your questions, you can put them in the chat area. But the first question I saw was from Gamal in terms of Hispanic identity and white non-Hispanic identity. Briefly, Hispanic identity would refer to so Hispanic would be an ethnicity, not a race. So ethnicity just refers to a cultural background. So Hispanic identity would refer to a background where someone's ancestors would come from a Spanish-speaking country. Whereas if someone would be non-Hispanic, their ancestry would not come from a Spanish-speaking country. So if someone would be white, non-Hispanic, it means that their racial identity would be white, but their cultural or ethnic identity would be non-Hispanic. And in my class that actually I'm teaching on next week, actually, when I refer to race and ethnicity, we talk about some of the history in terms of where Hispanic identity came from and how the US government didn't identify Hispanic until 1970. Many of these identities are somewhat formed by the government and by social convention. And if you actually look towards the Hispanic community of today and of Florida, of the nation, the large scale preference is for one's national group or national heritage. So someone will be more likely to identify, let's say, as Cuban American or Puerto Rican American, as opposed to Hispanic as their first identity. So in your cultural outreach to the Hispanic community within your PTAs, you want to first look towards the national identity and then look towards Hispanic identity as secondary, because survey after survey shows that this continued identification with national group is still dominant. So thank you for that question, Gamal. So additional questions. And you can put them in the chat area, or you can say them out loud as well.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for mentioning the social construct of nationality and race and all that good stuff.
Okay, yes, thank you. Yeah, many of these are not, let's say, they're not etched into a stone. They are adaptive ideas. You can look even towards the category of Black and see that it's changed throughout U.S. history to be more inclusive and less inclusive throughout time. You can look to the category of white as well, and being more or less inclusive, where some groups, especially from Southern Europe, were not considered to be white until the 20th century, till well into the 20th century. In terms of people of Jewish descent, can look towards people of Italian descent as being subject to discrimination through the late 19th century, early 20th century. There's actually a lynching of an Italian person in Tampa because of their presumed race that was seen as non-white at the time. So these ideas are important and ever evolving. So that's why it's important to stay attuned to these different cultural nuances and to try to have representation of a variety of kinds in our PTAs.
Do you have any advice on sensitivities given what has happened in Israel for our PTAs?
Oh, that's interesting. So I would think that, well, in terms of direct foreign policy, opinions, I think that Florida PTA should try to remain grounded in this is just my personal opinion, try to remain grounded in terms of our focus on experiences of domestic children and families. And with that, I would say encourage people to talk issues out and to acknowledge that experiences are largely the same across societies in terms of wanting to have of our children and families, and there's of course a preference against violence across all groups. So just acknowledge that and encourage people to remain as peaceful and inclusive as possible. And you'll find that the vast majority of people are. Some of the loudest voices are the ones that aren't. But if you look at what most people would believe and hope, most people just want to have peace and harmony across the multiple groups that are there. So while we wait, where would everyone be from within the state of Florida? So I saw someone wanted to have that idea before. So where are you all from?
This is the quietest I've ever heard this group. I'm from Miami-Dade County.
Mhm. Seminole.
All right, Seminole, if Orlando, we have Duval.
Duval.
Excellent.
Broward.
Orange County.
Broward, Orange.
Miami. So, Miami.
Yeah. Miami-Dade, Hillsborough. Okay, so a pretty diverse group in terms of geography. That's pretty good. Of course, we would want to have inclusivity across the state, including the Panhandle, which it looks like we may not have, but it might be a time issue in terms of people's lunch breaks.
True.
So, if are any final questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I saw a reference, I think Karen, you posted that about the website. Is that one of the ways that we get this information out to our local unit? I don't think we encourage them enough to have DEIJ chairs, and even at the county council level. Is there a way that we are not aggressively, but gently aggressive, letting them know the importance of doing that? Because here in Orange County, we have 170 languages in our public school. It's insane. And there's no way we're going to reach all of them, but at least we can try with the top ones. You know what I mean?
We actually have a person on the DEIJ subcommittee who's going to reach out to all of the county councils pretty shortly to get the contact information for the DEIJ chairs or equivalents within the counties. So you'll be hearing shortly. We'll be aggressive, hopefully not too aggressive, but it will be fairly aggressive and pointed to get the information and to get the ability to reach out. Yes, a question, comment from Bobby.
So I another one of the Duval PTAs, and first of all, for those who don't know, Duval is huge, and within our school itself, though, we have families coming from all across the city. It's not just a small neighborhood school, or even though it's a high school, it's not just a neighborhood high school. We have people driving sometimes an hour just to get to our school. So one of the things that I have noticed is that we also have the IB program, the International Baccalaureate program. So we also try to focus, the school, I should say, tries to focus on having that international presence within our teachers. Especially, we have many teachers who are multilingual, but also with our families. When we help out with tours, especially during the fall and wintertime, we have families touring, whether or not they want to come to our school. We have many families who come in and the parents don't speak English. They have to have their children translate. Just trying to set it all up. So with having such a diverse group of families from every background, various ethnicities and various socioeconomic and just everything, is it better to try to focus on the majority of the groups, and is it better to try to encompass everybody and be all inclusive? I mean, obviously that's what we're here for, is to learn how to be more inclusive and diverse. But when you have such a broad range, I just want to, I don't want to start like branching off and having 100 different branches, and we need to connect with every single individual person out there. If it's going to push people away, being too much, you know what I mean, is overbearing to try to be so inclusive with all the various different groups and backgrounds. Sorry, that was a lot. I hope I made sense.
Yes. So, I mean, you didn't say, but I know this, I'm familiar with the school because when I was involved as on the PTA National Board and also the Florida Board as a youth representative, I remember your PTA, based off of your description, brought a number of students to the state convention. So I remember them consistently being active and involved. So it's a pretty good PTA in terms of continuing activity and involvement. So that's already a plus. So I would encourage both. So I would encourage both having outreach to all parents, as well as to the extent that you have resources and bandwidth. So time, we're volunteers after all, to get the different types of parents to receive messages, to receive outreach would be good. You can use a variety of different resources. So you can use things such as Google Translate. You can also try to utilize any currently involved parents who might be multilingual, or even if you can look towards a common second language, or you can even use the children themselves as volunteers. So many times the children will have a exposure to both cultures and be able to tap into their own resources to use, and they can be useful. They can be the children of the parents you're trying to reach out to, or simply children who are part of the language groups or cultures that you want to reach out to, and they can be volunteers. And I believe it's actually a PTSA that you have, or is it? Yes, yes. So it is the school I'm thinking of. So have students become members in PTA, have them become active, and try to have them use some of their volunteer time and resources for that purpose would be useful. We can ask them if they would want to, and many of them would be happy to, and they would be able to include these multiple groups. So I would encourage both,
Right.
as opposed to one or the other.
Right. I guess I just didn't want to, overwhelm the entire community with, trying to reach and every single different background, every single culture, but also if that's something that maybe that is feasible, maybe that isn't, like you said, and of course, time and effort is certainly a key factor there amongst our volunteers, but I do think the students being involved is probably key, like you're talking about. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, they're there. They're active. From what I recall, they were extremely effective advocates. So yeah, just try to, and everyone should try to do an inventory of the resources that they have available to them within their PTAs and within their communities. And you'll find that there are a lot of tools that are just left on the table that you can actually use, and people would be willing and able and very eager to become part of something and to help others who are in their community or have similar experiences as them, or who they see are not included and may not be part of their community, but they want everyone to be included. So with that, let's hand it back over to leadership. Thank you all for a great session.
I was sorry.
Diana.
I was actually going to say, it sounds kind of weird, but I've actually seen some high schools use their language clubs, French club, Spanish club, Italian clubs, where they can actually offer those volunteer hours to the students because they give them real training. So for example, if you have an Italian club, you can offer that as a service, for that day. Okay, any parents that speak Italian, we have the Italian club that will be willing to translate for that day. And you give it that one night where you can use that resource. The students can use it as a real life training, and then they can get their volunteer hours, and the parents can, nobody really thinks about that. They can use it as a credit as far as that also. So that can be like an untouched resource. Also. There you go, like Crystal put, you can use the language clubs for that.
Yeah,
Karen, would you like
exactly.
to close us out? Diana, that was an awesome idea. I bet some of the high school PTA on here and some of our county councils are going to think about using that because I'm certainly going to recommend it to Miami-Dade when I see Maria. Karen, would you like to close us out?
Thank you. Yes, thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you for the team who put this together. I am going to post a couple things that you should be putting on your calendar as a save the date. The first of which, you could take your advocacy efforts to Tallahassee in January of 2024. That registration should be opening soon. And there are the dates from January 28th to the 31st. So that's a huge opportunity to take all of our advocacy, regardless of who we are and whom we are. The next date I'd like to bring to your attention is save the date for our annual leadership convention, which is July 28th to the 21st. It'll be our third year at the Omni Orlando Resort at Champions Gate, and we'll have many opportunities for training such as this. And finally, just so you know, all of our webinars on these Road to Success Wednesdays, they are recorded and then they're posted at floridapta.org. So look for the Road to Success seminars. They go back a year or more if you missed something. Did I miss anything else, everyone? All right. Well, thank you all.
We have
so-
another session tonight, and we have sessions every Wednesday.
That's right, 7 p.m. if you want to come back. Different people ask different questions, so it's not a bad idea. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good job, guys.
Yes.
Thank you.